As I get nearer to Newport, I'm feeling like I want to know more about the ordinary men who gave their lives on the night of the Chartist Rising. There are plenty of books about the leaders, John Frost, Zephaniah Williams and William Jones. But I've come across one of the lesser-known figures who died that night at the Westgate, a man called William Ferriday.
It seems that his family appears to have lived in Blaenau Gwent since the late 18th century. His wife, Mary, they had 6 children. So he worked down the Fleur-de-Lis colliery, or Trellin, the Welsh name, and it's likely that his 2 eldest boys, William, who was 13, and Thomas, who was 7, probably worked underground with him. We can assume that William joined a military unit, probably during the summer of 1839, so in the build-up towards the Rising, and he would have been part of a 10-strong unit with a captain, and those people would have been made up from the people that he actually worked with at the coalface. So they would have already known each other, have a strong sense of solidarity and loyalty, so that's interesting.
I'm now beginning the final stage of the Chartist march. For men like William Ferriday, it was too late to turn back.
Must have been hard going on the march that night. It was dark, it was cold, pouring with rain. William Ferriday apparently had been very quiet all that day. Now the reality is probably starting to hit him. This is going to be a night that he might not return from. He knows that there's going to be violence. He knows that there's going to be a lot of men. He's heard that there are men coming down from all over the South Wales valleys, from as far as Dowlais, Rumney, Nantiglow, Ebervale, Tredegar. But any fears that William Ferriday might have had are allayed by the fact that all he has to do is look to his side, and there are his friends, who he's known all his life, who he works with at the coalface. Little does he know that his leader up ahead, John Frost, was having severe doubts.
On the night of November 3rd, there was an agreement for the 3 leaders, Frost, Jones and Williams, to meet here, at the Welsh Oak, just outside Newport. But there were complications.
Well, let's just say they didn't all get here at the same time.
Right.
To what extent that was due just to horrendously bad weather, driving rain, cold autumn night, trying to get 5,000 people to come down from several different valleys to converge on the same place at the same time. There are 3 main columns which are supposed to converge here, and they don't, and they miss each other by hours. Now, to what extent that is simply due to the difficulties of getting the thing organised, or to what extent Frost is actually trying to slow things down, is debatable.
His reservations, Frost's, were totally understandable in the circumstances. He must have known, as a highly intelligent man, with a background of 20 years of organisation, that you should pick your time and your battlefield.
And he's not sure that this is the time on the battlefield.
That's right. But he couldn't do anything about it.
Right, because it's happening, it's underway.
It was a dam bursting.
Now the march was beginning to enter its final dramatic phase. The thousands of men who had come down through the South Wales valleys were now entering Newport. They were cold, they were wet, and they were no longer under the cover of night. As William Ferriday passed St. Woolos Cathedral and started heading down Stow Hill, any ambiguities about where he was heading and what he was supposed to do were starting to be dispelled. He knew that he was only minutes away from the Westgate Hotel. The Westgate Hotel in Newport, the hub of power, and the Westgate Hotel where the symbol of that power resided. The mayor, Thomas Phillips, inside it. The magistrates, inside it. The richest families in the area taking refuge inside it. But also inside it, the soldiers of the 45th Regiment. But the marchers, as they were coming down here with their pikes and their muskets and their weaponry, had been told that the soldiers would not fire on them. The soldiers would be sympathetic to their cause, so they would probably offer no resistance. But as William Ferriday was about to find out, that wasn't exactly true. Originally, Frost's attack was supposed to be on the front of the hotel, under cover of night. But of course now, it's about 9:30 in the morning, daylight, so people were trying to get in through the rear and through the side, but they couldn't get entry. So the thousands of men poured down the bottom of Stoke Hill, here, in front of the Westgate Hotel. Suddenly, a musket went off. We don't know if it was one of the soldiers or if it was one of the Chartists, but a bullet was fired, and that began the whole thing. Suddenly, the order was given for the shutters to be opened and for the soldiers to start firing into the crowd. The thousands of men here pushing in, not knowing what was going on through the front entrance. Suddenly, there were bullets raining on them from here. As the bodies lay here, we know that someone was shouting for help, but soldiers were opening fire on anyone who might come anywhere near to get the bodies. So they were left to die out here. We don't know what the last thing William Ferriday saw was. It might have been his own friends, his own comrades falling around him, panicked faces, running, fear in their eyes. It might even have been his leader, John Frost, who said that as soon as the blood was spilt, he was terrified and he fled.
10 of the men who died at the Westgate Hotel that night, including William Ferriday, were buried here at St. Woolos Cathedral under the cover of darkness in unmarked graves.
The families of men who hadn't returned home that day or through the subsequent days started to come to Newport, fearing that it was their fathers, their sons, their brothers that had died that day. One of the women who came to Newport was Mary Ferriday, William's wife. She came and pleaded with the magistrates in the Westgate Hotel to be given her husband's body. She'd seen a coat that she said was his, and now she wanted his body. But she spoke in Welsh, and whether it was because of that or just because it was already a hopeless cause, her husband had already been buried here, she was turned away. That's the last we know of William Ferriday.
The men who died that night have largely been forgotten, but I feel their names should be heard.
John Codd, David Davis and his son from Bryn Mawr, William Evans, John Jonathan, William Griffiths, Robert Lansdowne, Rhys Meredith, David Morgan, John Morris, George Shell, Abraham Thomas, Isaac Thomas, Williams, the deserter, William Williams, William Aberdare, John the Roller, and of course William Ferriday.